This is episode number 174. I learned some big lessons when I was in the music business. One of them almost got me arrested. That's coming up.
This is the Red Podcast. How to take your idea and make a name for yourself within your industry and beyond. Spread your message. Attract a following. Rise above the noise. Here's your host, David Hooper.
Kim Davis. She's a county clerk in Kentucky. One of the jobs of a county clerk, you issue marriage licenses. Gay marriage is now legal in all 50 states. Kim Davis doesn't think it should be. So since that has become law, she has refused to issue licenses to gay couples. As an entrepreneur, what can you learn from this? Well, for one, if you're in a situation, working a job, working with a client, and you don't like that situation, quit. That's the best way to handle that. You also need to know that you cannot force your beliefs on others. This is a podcast for influencers, and as the name suggests, the job of an influencer is to influence. However, that influence cannot be forced. For example, I'm vegetarian. If I were to get a job at McDonald's, how effective do you think that would be for somebody who wants to come in and eat a hamburger if I said, nope, not going to serve it to you because I'm vegetarian and that's my belief? Doesn't work that way. You can share your belief with other people, but you cannot force your beliefs on others. That's lesson number 2 to be learned from Kim Davis. Lesson number 3, if you have somebody who's working for you and that person is not doing her job, fire her. It is not your responsibility to provide somebody with employment. I feel that one of the most powerful things that you can do as a business owner is to employ people. But those people have a responsibility to do the job, do the work that you're asking them to do. When those people are not able to do the job or they refuse to do it, which is what Kim Davis did, because they don't believe in what you're doing, you owe it to them and you owe it to yourself to let them go. Kim Davis, she would be much better off working a job where she could actually serve people and also working a job which would be in alignment with her beliefs. And there are plenty of people that are against gay marriage in this country. There are plenty of places that she could work where she doesn't have to be involved in that issue at all. So to recap, if you don't like the job that you're working, you don't like the clients that you're working for, quit the job, fire the clients. Life is too short. You cannot force your beliefs on other people. You may present them, but you can't force them. And finally, if somebody is working for you and he's not doing what you hired him to do, let him go. Let him go on to something that's a better match for him. Open the position up for somebody who is a better match for you. Let's get to the podcast. This is the Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for influencers. If you're a blogger, a podcaster, a speaker, a marketer, if you've got a message that you want to spread, this is the podcast for you. The focus, it's how to take your idea, make a name for yourself, and make money. On the last episode, I promised to tell you the story of how I found myself in a situation where I was almost arrested. That's coming up. First, I want to take you back to when I was in college. I went to college for music, thought I was going to be a musician. This is actually how I got involved in broadcasting. Took an introduction to broadcasting class, and the reason I did that was because that was the first step in me working for the college radio station. And I wanted to work for the college radio station so I could get on the air and play my own music. Found out rather quickly that that was not legal. Also, that the college radio station didn't play my kind of music at all. Our college radio station played jazz music, not what I was doing at the time. But I continued my music marketing efforts outside of the radio studio. One of my first big gigs, doing what we call street promotion. When I started street promotion, I started at the very bottom, more or less doing flyering. In other words, having printed material, sticking it anywhere, stapling them, nailing them, gluing them, taping them, posting these things anywhere and everywhere that I could. But there are two main problems with flyering. The first one is that it's illegal. In fact, this is such an issue, such a problem for almost every city in the nation. If you get a power bill, if you open up that power bill, it could be within your phone bill because they often share telephone poles, share the lines that they're using. But there's a message that lets you know, do not post ads on the poles. Like I said, people nail signs up, they staple flyers, and if you look at any telephone pole in any city, you'll often see nails, see staples, and that's very dangerous for the people who have to climb those poles, work on power lines, work on telephone lines. So that's problem number one with this job. It's illegal. Problem number two is that you can get hurt. Either you're climbing these poles yourself or trying to put yourself in different situations where you're going to be able to post a flyer, post a poster that doesn't get taken down. Or you're in a situation like the one I'm about to tell you about, where you're posting something on cars and people do not like things being posted on their cars. So a typical day for me is going out and doing just that. I'm climbing telephone poles. I'm sneaking onto public property, doing whatever I can to put up flyers, put up these bootleg renegade signs. Or I've got hundreds of flyers and I'm putting them under the windshield wipers of cars. And that's how I got into trouble. There was a huge parking lot at the local university. I'm talking about thousands of cars, not just hundreds of cars, thousands. Started at one corner, car number one, put a flyer on it. Car number two, car number three, car number four. I went down every single row of this parking lot, every single section from one corner to the other. And the moment that I was putting the very last flyer in my box on the final car, got what they call burps and cherries. Cop flashes his siren at me, lights come on, pulls over. Hey, what are you doing here? Cop takes the flyer off the car nearest us, and as he's looking it over, he looks up and he sees this sea of cars, each of them with a fluorescent yellow flyer. He explains to me that I've been trespassing. This kind of activity is illegal. He's threatening to arrest me. And I'm trying to explain to him that this is my job. I'm not just trying to harass people. And he makes me a deal. He said, I'm going to go away and come back in 2 hours. If all of these flyers are not removed, I'm going to arrest you. Cop pulls off. Then I looked out over that sea of cars, all those flyers on the windshields, and I thought about it. I was like, I'm not going to go out there and take all these off. I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to walk away from here. If I get arrested, that's just what's going to happen. But I don't think this guy is serious. I think he's just trying to scare me. So I walked away and never heard from the guy again. When you think about that situation, it's still happening now. Maybe not on the street, but authors, podcasters, bloggers, online, how many times have you posted something, just had it disappear? Certainly if you're posting anything on Twitter, what's the half-life of a tweet? Maybe minutes, probably seconds. What's the half-life of a Facebook post, of an Instagram photo, of a Vine video? You put it up, somebody else knocks it down. That was actually the bigger problem for me. When I was doing street promotion, that was actually the biggest problem that I had. It's not that I was going to get arrested. It's not that I was going to get hurt. It's that I was going to put something up and somebody wouldn't like it. So they'd either tear it down or they'd put something right on top of it. When everything that you put up is either deleted or in my case with street promotion, has something else put right on top of it, you learn to be tenacious. I used to see these rap guys. They had lots of releases. They were out flyering everywhere. And they would do multiple flyers. If there was a wall and a flyer wasn't big enough to cover the entire wall, it wasn't anything for these guys to put up a dozen flyers on one wall, maybe 24. Then their competition would come up and put something right on top of it. Then they come back and put something right on top of their competition. This would happen over and over and over again. There was a limited amount of space. And that's the reason we were climbing poles. That's the reason you were looking for places where people couldn't get to. So it's this back and forth competition, not unlike your business right now on social media. There's a back and forth competition for the attention of your audience. You post a tweet, the next guy that they're following, he posts a tweet. Then there's photos. Then there's videos coming through. Then Aunt Sally, she's on Twitter, she's posting. So what do you have to do? Got to keep going back to these people. You can't just post something once and expect people to remember it. You got to keep posting again and again and again. So what do you do when somebody's deleting your message, putting their message right on top of yours? Eventually, I moved out of street promotion. I was coordinating that, but having other people go out and do it. But I was still servicing record stores. And I remember going into a record store. It was actually here in Nashville. I was working in the Southeast. More like what I call records and bongs. Had rolling papers, glass pipes, a few records in the corner. So I go in there. I was working a rap album. Wanted to get it in the store. Started talking to these guys about flyering. And they really schooled me in competitive marketing. It was the solution to the problem I'd always had, where I was putting something up and having somebody come up right behind me and put their message over mine. And it's going to be your solution if you're playing the Twitter game, you're playing social media. If you're in a competitive market and there are a lot of people going up against you to get to the same clients. That solution, baby oil. Things got so competitive in this flyery market. What these guys were doing was climbing poles, going to places where they put their flyers up. They get out a bottle of baby oil, squirt it all over their flyer, and make it so slick, nobody could put anything on top of it. It's a big-ass mess, but it works. It's kind of like when you were a kid. Remember going to lunch in the school cafeteria? You had some cookies. Everybody's trying to get one of your cookies, so you lick it. It's messy, but it gets the job done. Same thing. You make such a mess that nobody wants to follow you. Nobody can follow you. So that's my question to you. What is your baby oil? If you're an author, how prolific are you? Maybe that's your baby oil. Keep coming up with book after book after book. If you got a podcast, how frequently do you put out new episodes? How good are your episodes? I've talked on here before. You want to make your forehand so good that people don't notice you've got no backhand. This is a very similar concept. You want to make yourself so slick that nobody can follow you and put up their message where yours was. Make such a big dent, they can't get around it. When you're so slick, nothing sticks to you. You're not just playing everybody's game. You're not just using the usual tools. In flyering, it was tape, nails, staples. You're adding something different. Everything that you do to market your business has that differentiator. Maybe it's not obvious, and maybe it shouldn't be obvious. You don't want it to be that obvious. What you want is something that people can't easily replicate. There's another analogy here. I mentioned that this is very messy. You need to embrace the mess. The failed jobs you've had, the failed relationships, the addiction, accidents, mistakes, and the mess is what gets us where we want to go. The reason I can speak so definitively about an employee like Kim Davis who doesn't do her job and tell you that you need to let those employees go immediately is because I've had those employees myself. And the reason I know how it is from the other side is because I've been that employee. I've had jobs before. Before I was self-employed, had about 27 jobs. Some of them lasted 2 hours. Some of them lasted a little longer than that. I was just waiting for somebody to fire me. But I didn't know any better. I didn't know that's what I needed. So instead, I showed up. I was miserable. I was a jerk. I was awful to be around. The most compassionate thing you could have done to an employee like me and to somebody like Kim Davis is to let that employee go. That's the mess. That's how we learn how to be good entrepreneurs. That's how we learn how to influence. On the last episode, 173, it's at redpodcast.com/173, talked about being heckled on stage, how I handled that situation. The only way you learn how to handle that situation is going through it. That's the mess. That's the mess that we have to embrace. So if you're going through something right now, I encourage you to embrace it. I'd love to hear about it. Reach out to me. At David Hooper on Twitter is the best way to get me. I respond to everything. At David Hooper on Twitter. Follow me. Feel free to send me any questions you have about this. Feel free to send me your stories about this situation. I'd love to know some of the sticky situations that you've been in and what you've learned from those. If you've been to redpodcast.com, I've got something called the Red Insiders. It is free. It's your opportunity to get on the phone with me and other influencers. We'll talk one-on-one, just me and you. I'll help you with your biggest marketing challenges. I'll help you to grow your influence. I would love to talk to you, love for you to be a part of this. Again, it's free. Go to redpodcast.com. It's in the right-hand column. Getting ready to do a call, and I would love to talk to you. Thanks so much for listening to Red Podcast. I appreciate you. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.